Three, two. Yo, what's going on, everybody? Thank you for tapping in. This is CTC Radio, the only radio station committed to the coast, playing 805 hip hop and R&B every Monday through Friday night at 8 p.m. Pacific time. Yo, I had to do this, yo. Like, I had to reach out. I had to shoot my shot. You know what I'm saying? I pulled out the scope. I pulled the trigger. You feel what I'm saying? And I hit the target. My man, Damizza, was so kind enough to come on the show and talk to us. So I really thank you for showing up, man. And I really appreciate you. Welcome to CTC Radio.
Well, thank you for having me. I mean, anytime the 805 call, I gotta step up. You know what I'm
Let's
saying?
go. Let's go. So, I mean, we have a lot of independent artists watch this radio station for just for a little background because I know we didn't get a chance to really talk. Connect the Coast is a 805 label, independent label and music technology company, and we use emerging technology to empower Black and Brown artists on the coast. And so we've been using things like
Oh,
Web3, AI, and different platforms on socials to kind of educate artists on how they can gain more sovereignty over their content, own their IP, and just not chase labels around and kind of create a scene and build a strong community here. And so we love to have artists come
so,
through. We love to have more experienced people like yourself come through and share those experiences, but also like kind of give insights on where the industry is going. So I just wanted to give you that context before we get started. So if you wouldn't mind, I would love to hear like what your tie is to the 805, where you from, and and just a little bit about your.
I gotta smile, man. I gotta smile. I'm born and bred in the
Let's
805.
go,
Boy,
let's go, and your background in radio, please.
well, I was born at Cottage Hospital in Santa
Let's
Barbara,
go.
way back, way back when it was much smaller. But I was born at Cottage Hospital in Santa Barbara. I grew up in Santa Barbara, went to San Marcos High School. Lived right there on Turnpike, right before Tucker's Grove for most of my life. Um, you know, I mean, it was a local thing.
Hey,
I started DJing when I was about 12 years old, right there off of Cacique and Salinas, uh, next to the crack house, across from the Fairway
people
Market.
think that don't exist out
Um,
here, but it does.
so that's where the radio station KHTY was at. And so Y97, that's where I started at. And I started as an intern. I was about 12 years old. My grandma got me a boombox. My aunt got me some cassettes, and they were old rock cassettes, Hall and Oates and Abracadabra by the Steve Miller Band. So, when I flipped the switch and all of this dance music and 80s music, Information Society and Stacy Q and the Jets and, all of the early rap and all that stuff came on, I was just like, whoa, what is this? And then they gave out the phone number. So I started bugging Michael Newman, who was the night jock. And he said, come down. And he put me in this closet to file the CDs the first night, thinking I, wouldn't get it done. And my grandma slept in the parking lot. And I sat there and I alphabetized the whole thing. I came back the next night. He's like, "You here to finish the job?" It's like, "No, I finished 6 a.m. this morning. You didn't see me leave." He's like, "I left at midnight. I thought the door was shut, so I thought you were already gone." I said, "I was in the closet,
Crazy,
like
crazy.
filing the CDs." So he's like, so then he started letting me press buttons when he went to the bathroom, and then it was like, he'd stand on the other side of the board and let me press the buttons, kind of like in La Bamba, where they had the engineer on one side and the guy talking on the other.
Yup.
So that's kind of how I started. And then like Dynamite Darren Stone and Rick Aker and Jim West and all of those guys, Abby Bonnell, all of them just gave me a shot. And I became the night jock at about 15 and the program director by 17. And the alternative format was just starting, so we did kind of a top 40, album orientated alternative kind of thing, and broke a lot of records, had a lot of artists come through, and the more artists that came through, the more caused attention for the station and for myself. And then I ended up at Power 106 in 97 and became the music director, and got really lucky breaking, Eminem, Jay-Z, putting Snoop and Dre together for 2001, and we just got really lucky.
I mean,
So
and so if
started producing
mhm,
records in '98. First record I produced was "I Still Believe" for Mariah Carey,
okay,
Crazy Bone and the Brat, and Shit, it was all from there.
Crazy, crazy. And so
But it all started from Granny's living room right there at Turnpike and Servato Way.
on the coast, on the 805. So that lets you know that it's
Right
possible if
there.
you're watching. Um,
Oh hell yeah!
and
I was DJing the school dances at Dos Pueblos, San Marcos, and Santa Barbara High. I was DJing the dances. I didn't even go to my prom. I DJed
that's so crazy.
it.
That's so crazy. Cause so I've always heard of you like my whole career. Like it's funny. Like I always call myself like a rap Forrest Gump kind of. Cause I've been around in major moments in hip hop, but I was just in the background and nobody
Same
really
here.
knew. And so like when I got my first deal and I moved to LA, I feel like you had just left Power and like E-Man started taking over and stuff, and they started spinning my record on there, and Felly just started kind of getting bigger. And I heard you were from the coast, and I was like, "Yo, are
Yeah,
you serious?" Like because I had never heard of anybody other than like the Latin rappers, like on Pocos Pedalocos and things like that, coming out of 805. So I was just like, "Yo, this is crazy."
yeah,
And I was obsessed with radio at that time because it was just a unique time for when an artist could it it was different. It's very different. Like I know artists dream now about going viral and like that's a thing, but it was different when the radio was a different beast at the time. Like and to me the biggest
yeah,
thing was to get on the mix show. Like if I could get on a mix show, I know I people are gonna fuck with me. You know what I'm saying? And like I feel
yeah,
like we can go
yeah.
so many different ways with this interview, but I really kind of want to break down how radio works in your mind, and I definitely want to get to like where you see it going. Um, but what happened to the
Well,
mix?
it's a lot different now.
What happened to the mix show? Why did that stop? Can we start there? Why did the mix show format stop?
Budget cuts.
Is that simple?
Cats. Here's the thing. When we started, Steve Smith is really the one that pushed for the mix
Okay.
shows, and you know, the mixers were, in my eyes, the most important part of the radio station. And because they would break the records, and those were the guys that were in the streets and would bring in the records before everything else.
Mm-hmm.
So I was always a big advocate for the mixers. And we pushed to do like the Cali Caliente weekends and 24-hour mix marathons and all of this kind of stuff. But you got to pay the DJs to do that.
Right.
And when like the new general manager came in at Power 106, my first big issue was one of the comments that she made was these mixers should be paying us.
What?
And I was like, yeah, I was like, homie, like, and they're like, why are we spending this money? We should just be playing records. Why are we doing this? I don't understand the value in it. And I said, well, this is typical of why we're gonna have problems. Like you guys don't get what got us here. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like they were just looking for ways to budget cut and squeeze more money out of it. And instead of bringing someone in that understood the culture, that understood what propelled us to number one, they wanted to do things like, I remember this one time someone, there was an artist, Snoop Dogg,
Mm-hmm.
wanted to do the Beat Summer Jam. Well, Snoop stamped us. You know what I mean? He
Yep.
did the Dre and Snoop reunion. He did like 5 free shows for us. Anytime we asked Snoop, you know, to come to a ribbon cutting, he'd do it. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, look out for us. He'd do Big Boy. He'd do the All Star weekends. He was on the air for us on the weekends as a jack.
Right.
You know what I mean? All of this stuff. And when the new guy came in, and they were like, no, he can't do this, and I'm like, no, they're going to pay him $250,000 for this. Like, we're not going to take that out of his pocket.
Right.
Like, he's done so much for us, we can't say no. And the way he put it was, Damien, I'm asking you for a hall pass, which put me in an incredibly fucked up position, because it's like I'm sitting there with my boss who's saying no,
Right.
and Snoop is asking me directly, like, screw everybody else, is it cool with you? So it was like, damn, what am I gonna? I was like, dude, and that was the beginning of the end for me at Power, because then it was like my bosses were like, I can't control him. You know what I'm saying? Like he's gonna do what he wants,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm the boss here. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's where the ego shit started, and then it became, you know, the I told you so shit, and that's
Mm-hmm.
where like the mixer shit comes in. It's like, dude, stop. The pay the mixers. This is what's making our weekend so hot. So they pulled the mixers off the weekend. Our ratings went down. It's not rocket science.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Huh.
But it's like, but then that same general manager would say, well, if the ratings go down, that means that the music director sucks.
Crazy.
That we're just not playing the right records. And I'd be like, no, it's how you play the records. You know what I mean? It's a programming issue. You're painting us into a corner to lose. You know, and then what they did was they we owned another station, KZLA, and it was a country station, so we didn't fight for any market share. Well, they switched that to a demo R&B station, which is like, an older woman's radio station, but that would take our upper end, those older women that would listen to Power, out and give them something else to listen to. Right. And I'd be like, dude, what are you doing? You took away our mixers, which screwed us on the weekend, which is affecting our ratings. Now you're bringing on a station that's going to compete with us and erode our upper end. That's going to hurt us. And then they were like, well, you're really not going to like this decision, but we rented a spot on our stick. And I said, to who? And they had said a Hispanic name. And I said, look, 49.6% Hispanic in Los Angeles. And you don't think it's going to be a Hispanic radio station with a Hispanic name that's going to come right at us? Mm-hmm. And you just rented it to them?
Wow.
And that was Latino 96.3. So we basically, the general manager and the programming staff that they brought in, because I was producing records, so I could not be the program director. I couldn't be the final say.
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying? Because it would be a conflict of interest. Right. So they always had somebody to babysit Damizza. Do you know what I'm saying? But when they started wanting to make those decisions and justify their position and made these decisions that didn't work, tell them, look, this hasn't worked.
Crazy.
It started to lose. And now it is one of the last English-speaking radio stations in Los Angeles. K-Day is beating them. They're beating themselves. K-Day is owned by the same company, and K-Day is beating them.
It's nuts. It's nuts to see. It's nuts to see the decline in radio, just because it was such an institution and discovery, and there's just something different about hearing a record broken on radio first. So like when I got my first
radio doesn't break records anymore. That's what the problem is no one will take a chance and no one will break a record on radio because they're chasing. They're not any innovators anymore. You know, I love E-Man to death, and he's a great mixer. But, how long was he program director for?
Yeah, a long time. But let's get into
3 months.
Let's get into the mechanics of this because like for me, Power is a beast on its own, right? But like and they can make every excuse in the world. But like in these P1, P2 markets, like, and for those that don't know, a P1 market is a really, really small market like San Luis Obispo. P2 market is a bigger market, probably like Oxnard, maybe a little bigger. In these P1 and P2 markets, like back in the day, like when I first got my deal, I would ask like, why am I not getting played on these smaller radio stations? And they would tell me, well, we have all these deals with Interscope and so and so and so. If we don't play Eminem's record, then the label rep's gonna hit us and they're gonna be mad and this and this and this and that. And in that time, cool, I'll accept that excuse. But in this time today, like I've been in the building so much at the labels, and I know for a fact the labels, the P1s and the P2s have to play the big records, right? So what is their excuse for not breaking regional records at smaller P1, P2? It feels like they're shooting themselves in the foot by not doing that. And are they making excuses, or am I just not seeing? Well,
the P1s and P2s are mostly run by independents. So what happens is the independent comes in and says, I'll give you X amount of dollars in radio advertising to be able to work my records to you. So then the major label goes to the independent and says, this is what I'm working this week. Eminem, Dr. Dre, blah, 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 blah. Right. So the regional artists aren't on that list. So you would have to go to an independent promoter and say, look, here's my budget at 20 grand or 50 grand or whatever it is to break that record in that region. And you hire them to get it on that local radio station.
Right. But
that's how you'd have to do it.
But isn't so like I've done that. I've done those radio runs and things like that. And that makes sense. Like
it's not doing the radio runs, it's doing them right. You know what I mean? Because there's certain promoters that have exclusive deals with those stations.
Right.
So you've got to find out per station
Who they're
who
working
has
with.
that deal. You know what I'm saying?
Right. But my question
It's like,
is
is
that
it a Greg
still
Lally? That's not on my teeth.
no,
Sorry.
you good. Is that still a lucrative, like, even if, like, if we just look at the radio station as a corporation's main function
Mm-hmm.
is to grow profit. That's it. Like, grow profit year over
Right.
year. I feel like it's antithetical to growing profit to limit yourself to records that are only promoted by certain artists, because let's say you break a record from somebody that's regional that has a bigger network that might inspire other businesses to buy that ad space. I feel like,
But see, radio doesn't think like that.
huh,
The only radio company that's making a profit and has had record setting this year, and the most they've ever made, is iHeart. And iHeart can give a fuck less because they're mostly run by corporate
right,
advertising. So they're not even run by local ratings. They're cumulative
right.
ratings. You know what I mean? Like, how many people can you reach and nationally spread that across? Local advertising is very, very small in the grand scheme of
Of
things.
course. I mean, of course,
So,
to national radio stations for sure. Yeah.
but an artist would be better off just buying commercials of playing your hook for 30 seconds and promoting that, you know, who you are,
Hmm.
and getting uh, familiar with the audience. I mean, in a viral world like it is today, unless it's something like Icy Spice or Cardi B or Migos, or one of those big names that a label has a huge deal and a huge budget with, you're not going to get in on any of those radio
Huh.
stations unless you go to an independent, or have an independent, or have a promotion team with a very large budget that can make it happen. Because the problem with program directors today, and a lot of it's run by money.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
So, and that's not the way that we did it at Power. We didn't have an independent. We'd never have an independent. And you could not get me to play anything that wouldn't be right for my radio station.
Hmm. And that's, I mean,
So,
that was a different time. Like I said, like the way you were
totally
breaking
different
the
time.
way you were breaking
Nobody runs a
records,
radio station like that anymore.
even going
Nobody.
going to those mixer meetings was so dope. Like walking in the building, seeing all the DJs on, I think it used to be on Mondays or something, and playing the records, and
Yeah.
like that whole experience. I feel for a generation of artists that will never get to experience that, because it was just so motivating to do.
The pizza party.
Yeah, yeah, it was fire. It was fire. So
Yeah.
then, if radio is short sighted like that, um, what I mean, it hasn't innovated in over 30 years. What does the future of radio look like from your perspective?
Right now it's bleak because there's nobody that's taking chances like that. I wish that there was a better, better outlook. But the problem is if radio continues the way that it's going, I mean, look what they just did with AM radio. They're taking AM radio out of
Yeah.
cars. You're not going to get an AM radio station in cars anymore.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So what's next? FM?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, satellite's really not working. You know what I mean? The subscriptions to satellites are down astronomically. Unless radio changes and becomes podcast friendly and changes their models and becomes more visual, it's not going to work. And they're in trouble.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I'm seeing.
And it's sad because this is exactly where we were in '97 when Napster and LimeWire and all that stuff came out. They said it's going to be death of the music
Mhm.
industry, but the music industry evolved. And right now they're saying radio is dead because radio isn't evolving.
Yeah.
Now, if radio evolves and does something different, or just look, there's nothing new under the sun. If you go in any radio war, if you just strip down and do what made you famous, like a lot of artists, they get away from their brand. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? They start doing records that are different, trying to be different. But if they just go back, there's a reason why Michael Jackson, when he went out on stage and he did Smooth Criminal, he dressed in the Smooth Criminal video outfit.
Mhm.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
People expect certain things from you. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Like when Madonna goes out there and does Holiday, she's not dressed like in bondage. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And doing erotica. You know what I mean? It doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You've got to stay in your lane and play your position. And Power 106 is a record-breaking monster, and they're not breaking any records. And artists, if you're working to radio, you've got to work around radio.
Mm.
You've got to make radio see you other places in order to get on. It's not like back in the day where you just bring me a record and say, do you like it or not? And that's it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's or to a mixer and say, do you like this record? And they play it.
Right.
It just doesn't work like that anymore.
Right.
You know, it's a viral world.
So,
because records aren't getting broken at radio anyway.
yeah, because they're looking for the lowest risk, so they want to see you have those millions of fans. They want to see you have that community already, so they feel like
they don't want to take no chances.
It's not a risk, yeah, which is terrible because it makes radio a lot more boring. But
it makes it useless, is what it does. Facts. It makes radio useless
because everything they play is super late. Like we already got it on YouTube, and we're running the numbers up already. Like why would I go to the radio? You know what I'm saying? And there's so many other options. So I know we only have you for a limited amount of time, and I just want to give people like a scope of your history, man, and the scope of your impact on culture. So one of the favorite stories that I came up with, came across doing my research on you is how Snoop got signed to No Limit, and then how you played a part in getting him and Dr. Dre back together. I would love for you to tell that story briefly if you wouldn't mind.
Well, I met Dr. Dre at the Zoom Zoom video shoot they was doing with LL Cool J. And I had heard the original demo tape of that was leaking around the streets through, I think I got it at the Slauson Swap Meet. And it had Snoop Dogg on it. So the first question I asked him was, yo, where's the version with Snoop? That was the one. He's like, how do you even know that? And so we just kind of hit it off. And I was like, well, what's up with Snoop? And he's like, oh, I just ain't talked to him in a long time. So I kind of ran into Snoop, and he kind of said the same thing. I just ain't talked to Dre in a long time. So I hired Snoop to do weekends on Power. And I ran into him at a show. And at that show, we put him on stage with Biggie. So it was kind of like a cool, thing to kind of bring down the East-West heat, And I actually lied to both of them and said that each other wanted to work with each other. And, and the next thing I know, we got him in a room, and then we got him in to do a show in Hawaii, which led to them recording. And then Eminem came to the table. And then it was like, at that point, it was over. So Master P heard Snoop on the radio on the weekends, signed him to a new deal. Dre did a couple of records for that. The chemistry was there.
What were those records, Dre called me in one night. Saying?
Well, like Bustin' Rocks and, all of those records. And then Still DRE, he called me to the studio. It was at Henson, at A&M's old studios. And Scott Storch was in there, and they just had the beat and the piano lick. Crazy. And Melman did the beat, and they just had the beat for Still DRE. And he's like, so I'm gonna send this to Jay-Z. What do you think? Do you think this will work on Power? And I'm like, hell yeah. You know what I mean? So, and then a while later, he gave me the Watcher Part 2, and I played that for Jay-Z one night. And Jay-Z's like,
stop.
I gave him the Watcher Part 2
that's one of my favorite Jay-Z songs. I know everybody hates the Blueprint too, but that song to me is but
that record was different. That
is so crazy, that was my
contribution to that album.
Yo, I love
it. And actually a funny song, Wet Your Lips, that's on Bam's album with Nate Dogg, rest in peace. That was supposed to be on Jay-Z's album, but he wanted me to take Nate Dogg off it, so I said no.
What?
He wanted the beat. He didn't want Nate on it. And I was like, I'm not taking Nate Dogg off a record. I'm sorry.
He fucked up.
It's just not working like that.
That's crazy.
I did, but I didn't.
Right.
I fucked up and he fucked up. You know what I mean? I should have talked to Nate and been like, hey, you know what I mean? Like, would have made me a lot of money, but
Hindsight is 2020 though. So I have a couple questions trivias because you've worked with some of my favorites. So Nate Dogg, another one of my favorites, and I've always liked Nate, but two songs that like really have a special place in my heart are Never Leave Me Alone and Oh No. Do you have any stories about either one of those records?
Well, Never Leave Me Alone was actually produced by Corrupt.
Okay.
Which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah. Corrupt did that record.
Wow.
And And oh no, um, God, that just came out of nowhere. That record just came out of nowhere. Jay Brown, who's partners with Jay Z and Rock Nation,
Mm.
who manages Rihanna, was at Elektra at the time, and he was Nate Dogg's A&R guy,
Okay.
and he set that up and started to get Nate on more features outside of the Dog Pound,
Got you.
and was branding him outside of the Dog Pound. And I had just put him on Where I Want to Be.
With Shade.
That was my first production with KG
Okay.
from Naughty by Nature, and that was my first single from Damizza Presents, and and that kind of set Nate kind of in a different, as a featured artist outside of the Dog Pound. That was his first real feature outside of the Dog Pound. And then he did the Fabulous record and the Ludacris record and the Oh No's and all of that kind of stuff.
Right.
So, I mean, and then I got to produce Music in Me for him, which was
Crazy.
fucking
Crazy.
one of the greatest times of my life.
I believe it. I believe it. I
But,
mean, I remember when that record.
but I miss Nate. Nate was one of my best friends, man. I miss
Rest
that
in
guy.
peace, man. I remember when that Oh No came out. Like, I always had respect for him for Regulators and all that stuff. But when I heard Oh No, I was just like, this guy does not miss.
Yeah.
You know, like, this is crazy.
Well, and it was different.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, he stepped out of the box. And what was kind of crazy is, I wanted to do, I remember when we were doing Gangster Walk, we were about to do Gangster Walk, and we did Music in Me instead first. And he's like, look, I'll do your gangster record. He goes, but I come to you for different shit. He goes, I like doing different shit with you. So I'll do, if I want to do gangster shit, I'll go to Dr. Dre. But he goes, you do more musical shit. I want to do that, R&B infused, like What Would You Do was always one of his favorites. You know what I mean? So
that's dope.
we would always have a great, Nate and I had such a sarcastic and great relationship. It was just so much fun. We would just get together and talk shit to each other for hours. And everybody else would just be kind of like, what are these two, like even when, I played a tape for Nigel and Junior one time, and said, look, this is me and your dad on a phone call. I was doing a drop for one of my mixtapes, and they both looked at each other and they go, I've never heard my dad talk with someone like that.
That's crazy.
Like, he's joking. He was always so serious. I never heard him joke with somebody like that and clown with someone like that. He goes, you had a different relationship with my father. Like, that's weird shit.
I think that's dope that you give them a perspective into his personality like that that they didn't get to see. I think that's really, really dope.
Yeah, it was dope.
Another thing. So 2 more questions, and then I won't keep you much longer. One is, it was really interesting to watch the rise of Shade Shice. That's when I really started to see your name like ring bells in the streets. And when I heard Money Owners, I was like, yo, Timbaland is so weird and dope. Like, this beat is crazy, and I never heard nothing like this on a West Coast artist like that. Like, were you the first radio personality to start having huge records like that? Like that? Did you start off the trend of the Felly Fells and the Eric Deluxes and stuff, or were there? Because I don't remember that happening before you. But am I wrong?
Funkmaster Flex.
He did have an album. He did with the big cap. I forgot about that. Okay. Yeah. Were you the first on the West Coast?
Oh yeah,
had to be. Okay.
I took it to a different. Flex did his thing, but he was more street records. You know what I mean? And I went straight for the juggler. We had a #1 rap single, like Where I Want to Be was a #1 rap single. And actually, Shade was kind of a mistake. Like, he was just my friend. We got together on Friday nights and made music in my basement, you know what I mean, all weekend, because I didn't know anybody in LA. So when we did, for instance, Where I Want to Be, the reason why Corrupt said Young Damian Young is I was rapping on the record.
That's crazy.
So they thought that was going to be my record. And then when I was going to put Snoop Dogg on that record. And Snoop invited me to the house, and then I showed up and he wasn't there. So I was like, just leave. I had told Shade, just get on the record and screw it. I don't want to just sit on it anymore. And, Sujit heard the record with Shade on it and said, this record's a hit. So I'm like, give the kid a shot. Screw it.
Scam artist Sujit?
And then, and it's funny that 50 Cent was the first artist to get $1 million. No. We got $1 million for Shade Shice through MCA.
I remember hearing that.
He
Like,
was the first artist, period, to get $1 million advance from a
that's
record label.
crazy. When you say Sujit, you mean scam artist Sujit?
Yeah.
That's crazy, bro. That's
Well, Sujit,
crazy.
I brought Sujit from UCSB in Santa Barbara.
What?
Yeah, he was going to UCSB. I found him at UCSB. He was my partner.
I did not know that either, bro.
I
That's
helped him promote
crazy.
on State Street. You know, we were doing shows on State Street, and he did Mobb Deep and Biggie and all these shows in Santa Barbara, rapping Forte, all of these. And I said, you know, come on. And I brought him with me to LA.
That's crazy, bro. The 805 has so many ties to like historic moments, and like people don't even know it.
Yeah.
Lastly, I would love to just hear about your experience producing for Mariah Carey. Like that, it just doesn't get much bigger than that. That's just insane. And speak to like the value of owning, you know, your publishing and your masters and just your IP rights, because a lot of people out on the coast don't understand the power of publishing checks and things like that. So
First record I ever did for her was I Still Believe. And it was a sample, and this covers, and it was a sample of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, Pure Imagination. Well, that was written by Leslie Bricusse and Anthony Newley. So to speak on publishing, I didn't get any publishing on I Still Believe because it was a remake of a Brenda K. Starr record. And then it was a sample from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Whoa. So one day, Mariah calls me up and says, look, we're going to get on the phone with Leslie Bricusse and Anthony Newley and explain to them what a sample is, because they think we're just stealing their song. So the most wise thing as far as publishing I've ever learned in my life came from Leslie Bricusse. And he said, look, so I explained to him what was sampling and a replay and what we were doing and kind of paying homage to the song. Right. And he said, look, I don't want any more or any less than anyone else. I just want to be treated fairly. So if we can split the publishing on this record between all of us, you know, the original writer of I Still Believe, not even us, just the original writer of I Still Believe. Mariah didn't get any publishing on that. No, you know what I mean? It was a remix of a remake. So Leslie Bricusse and Anthony Newley and Brenda K. Starr got that publishing. Sheesh. But, you know, if I could go back and tell a young Damizza, publishing is like your passive income. You know, your kids, your grandkids, your grandkids, long after you're gone, will get your publishing checks. And it's like basically putting a tree in the ground and that tree providing fruit for your family for the rest of their lives. So when you write a record or you have any success with a record, or even don't have success with a lot, because look, the more records that you have out, you know, give you pennies. You know what I mean? So if you have 100 pennies, it's the same as one record that gives you 100 pennies. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So if you have 1,000 records and each of them give you $1 a piece, then that's $1,000. You know what I'm saying? So no matter what you write or what you put out, you always register your publishing, whether it's BMI or ASCAP or whatever, because there's hundreds of records that I've done. And, you know, some of them make 20 cents, some of them make 500, some of them make $1,000 per, you know, quarter. Right. You know what I mean? You get paid per quarter 4 times a year, and that money helps.
1,000%. And make sure you set up your publishing company, because it's not enough to just register the song. I have so many songs and movies that I had to retroactively go back and get under my publishing company, because I thought just because I registered it, I was going to get a check, and those checks never came. And you can only retroactively, I think you can only go back for the money like a year or something like that.
Well, and if you get an admin deal, which is what I did, and, you know, they take 20%, but they find money in weird places that you would never find.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, so I have a great deal with Blue Water. Peter at Blue Water is just an amazing guy. And he finds, like the Netherlands, I'll get some weird 10 cents from the Netherlands on.
That's dope, though.
Some unheard artist that I forgot I produced in 99.
That's hard as fuck. I love that. I love that. So
So it's always good to chase your publishing.
moral
Yes.
of the story: if you can afford it, get your pub admin. At the very least, register your own publishing company and have your publishing on deck.
You want one of the greatest stories that I could say in Santa Barbara was I went to Metropolitan Theaters when it first opened in that in Goleta
Yeah, yeah.
at the Costco Center, whatever the hell that is. And I took my little brothers, and it was the very first Fast and Furious that played.
Okay,
And I did the main racing scene with Ja Rule.
that's crazy.
Life Ain't a Game. I produced that
That's
song.
dope.
And so watching that movie with my little brothers, Jason and Nick, in Santa Barbara, I drove from LA. I was working at Power. I took the weekend off. I took my little brothers to it. They knew the song because they knew, I had done it was on the Damizza Presents album. And when they heard it come on, they were just like, my brother's so cool. You know what I mean? So
there's nothing like that
and
moment.
they were only like 5 and 10 or whatever it was. But it was just amazing, to be an 805 kid that came from right down the street to be watching that in the movie theater at
And knowing
an
that that movie is
MTC
impacting
Santa
the
Barbara.
world too. That's huge.
It just blew me away, man. That was one of the greatest nights of my
That's
life.
super dope, man. That's super dope. Well,
And then staying through the credits and looking at it and seeing my name on the thing and
yeah.
saying, look, Nick, look, Jason,
Yo,
look.
that's the best part right there.
That was cool.
That's the best part. Well, look, man. I mean, I'm not
And we also had Nate Dogg Cali disease on that album too.
really.
Yeah, Nate Dogg Shade Shiest Cali disease was on the Fast and Furious 1 album.
Oh, so you was getting placements left and right over there, man.
Oh hell yeah, Murder Inc. Love me.
I see all them plaques in the back. I know they had to come from somewhere. So, man, look, I'm not gonna keep you all night. I could, because you have so many dope stories, man. I would
Thank you, man.
love for you to come back whenever you have time and just keep
Anytime, bro.
blessing the coast. This means so much, man. I really, really appreciate you. Is there anything that you're working on that my community can support right now?
Well, speaking of the 805, I got a new record with TMK coming
Oh.
out. He's from Camarillo.
Okay.
And we did the weekend with remix with Cap G, and Bams was on it. Bam's got some stuff coming out. We're doing a lot of stuff, but the next thing that's gonna come is TMK.
Okay, so we'll look him up.
So I'm really excited about that because TMK is fucking amazing, man. Great writer, great producer in his own right, great engineer, and I can't wait for that to
Send
happen.
me the video, send me the links. I'll be happy to play it all day, every day on CTC Radio, and we'd love to have him on as well and come chop it up with the people.
I will connect you. TMK is a great guy. You'll love him.
I'm looking forward to it, man. I really appreciate you. Have a great night, and I'll definitely be in touch, and hopefully we can make this happen again, man. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Shoot me a link to this. I want to see it when it
Yes,
comes
sir.
out.
I got you.
God bless you, buddy. Thanks for having me.
Peace. Have a good night.